Hello, everybody. Today, I can prove things are not shaped using coordinate geometry, using my distance formula and my how do I proves. So let's start by looking at our how do I proves. This video is going to be a little bit different. I'm just going to kind of talk our way through the answer key because there's really nothing new here. It's just a matter of understanding how it all comes together. So if I take a look at my how do I proves, for example, if I want to prove that something is an isosceles triangle, I have to show it has two congruent sides. An equilateral triangle has three congruent sides. So if I pull up first example here, it wants me to prove it's a right triangle but not isosceles. So I prove it's a right triangle, or ABC is a right triangle because its sides fit into Pythagorean theorem. I found all three sides, and I show they fit into Pythagorean theorem. So that's nothing new there. What is new now is it says, and then prove it's not isosceles. Well, if it was isosceles, it would have two congruent sides, so I have to show that it does not have two congruent sides. I already did the work, so again, I'm going to say that it is not isosceles. Because it does not have two congruent sides. I already found the distances, so I'm going to say that the distances are not the same because they don't have the same distance. If I want to prove that it's not a shape, then I'm going to show that it doesn't have the property that it needs. In number two, it wants me to prove that it is a rhombus but not a square. Well, if I refer to my rhombus and square, how do I prove? For a rhombus, I have to show that all sides are congruent. For a square, I would show that all sides are congruent, but diagonals are congruent as well. So if I'm going to prove the rhombus, that hasn't changed. FRDY is a rhombus because all sides are congruent. I found all four sides. I stated that they're all congruent because they have the same distance. But to prove it's not a square, well, a square does have congruent diagonals. So to prove it's not a square, I'm proving that it does not have congruent diagonals. I'm finding the distance of the diagonals and showing that they're different. And I'm saying that they're not congruent because they don't have the same distance. To prove it's not a shape, I'm going to prove it does not have the property that it would need to have in order to prove the shape. Let's take a look at one more. Number three, it wants me to prove that it's a trapezoid, but not an isosceles trapezoid. Well, to prove the trapezoid, it needs to have one pair of opposite sides parallel. To prove an isosceles triangle, it needs to have trapezoid, excuse me. I have to prove it has one pair of opposite sides parallel and congruent legs. So to prove the trapezoid, I'm going to state that it has it's a trapezoid because it has one pair of opposite sides parallel. I find the slopes. I state that they're parallel because they have the same slope. Now, to prove that it was isosceles, I would prove it has congruent legs. So to prove it's not isosceles, it does not have congruent legs. I calculate the distances and show that they're not the same. I state they're not congruent because they don't have the same distance. So to prove it's not a shape, I prove it doesn't have the property that it needs to have. I'm still calculating slope or distance or whatever I need to calculate. And instead of saying that things are congruent because they do have the same distance, I'm saying they're not congruent because they don't have the same distance. There, the legs are not congruent because they don't have the same distance. Here, the diagonals are not congruent because they don't have the same distance. And here, it's not isosceles because the sides do not have the same distance. Hope that's enough for you. That's all I got. Let's see if I can figure out how to turn this thing off.